We have officially reached preview season here on the channel. Welcome in to Armchair Analysis. It is the Florida State Seminoles 2025 season preview. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic week so far. Hope you all are having a good day, a good Sunday. It's time, without any further interruptions, to get into this. I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. June 1st, and we get 67 plus Notre Dame straight conference previews, or sorry, team previews every single day from now until we finish them up in the beginning first week or two of August. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about Florida State. In 2024, we all are very aware of the disastrous season that they sat through. 2-10, 1-7 in conference, good enough for dead last. 17th in the new look ACC. And it wasn't really, it came out of nowhere, but at the same time, for those who might have paid attention, you may have seen it coming at least slightly. And the reason I say that is the things that changed over the course of the season, right? You're coming off of getting blown out, 63-3, was it? In the Orange Bowl against Georgia. You got absolutely demolished after being left out of the 2023 College Football Playoff in favor of Alabama. You go into 2024, the fan base is talking about proving a point. Well, what we end up seeing instead of the fan base and the team proving a point is a point proven, but in fact to what we witnessed, which was them being left out of the playoffs. They go 2-10. Do I believe that that's on repeat? I'll let you know a little more about that later, but I think it would be really hard to repeat. I think you'd almost have to be trying, and honestly, if this is repeated, it then begins the question of Mike Norvell, and is the buyout worth getting rid of a head coach who's going 2-10 back-to-back years? Or worse, or maybe even slightly better. I mean, really, what's the number? 4, 5 wins? Before we say, no, the buyout's not worth it. I think we really have to sit back and wonder what is going to happen. When you look at the 2024 team, offensively, they were a team that averaged only 15.4 points per game, not yards per game, 15.4 points per game. That was good enough for dead last in the Power 5 and 131st overall in the country. The defense allowed 28 points per game, good for 87th, but when you're not scoring, 28 points seems insurmountable. And granted, Florida State only scored over 20 points against an FBS opponent once. When you look at their turnover margin, they were minus 1.6 per game, and that is good for 132 out of 134 in FBS. When you look at this team and what they were last year, it makes you really wonder what changes in the 2025. You look at the head coach, of course, that doesn't change, but this is an offensive line that needed to be addressed, and I think you address it both in the portal and by bringing in Gus Malzahn, who is a run-first coordinator. He's going to be your offensive coordinator, coming over from UCF, of course, was let go last year. At defensive coordinator, you got Tony White, who's coming over from Nebraska, led a pretty tough Nebraska defense, honestly. That was one of the better performances I think I can remember last year from a Nebraska defense, led on a defensive line, of course, by Ty Robinson. This defense for Nebraska, or for Florida State, comes in slightly inexperienced, but there are pieces that can really make this thing go. As for the offense, they don't lack the experience. They have 4 senior transfer offensive linemen. Those are Gunnar Hansen, Luke Pettibon, Adrian Medley, and Micah Pettis. Their other offensive lineman, Richie Leonard IV, another senior. There are heavy graduates here on the front at the line of scrimmage. That's going to be a big deal. The addition in the running back room, which they didn't really make any additions, but the addition to the running game, I should say, is Thomas Castellanos, coming over to play the quarterback position from Boston College. Wasn't working out at Boston College, and the biggest reason for that is Bill O'Brien's style doesn't match what Castellanos wants to do. However, we've seen the last couple of years, it does match what Gus Malzahn likes to do. Of course, he brought in KJ Jefferson, John Reese Plumlee in past. It's very Gus Malzahn-like to go ahead and bring somebody in such as a Thomas Castellanos, really boost the run game. When you look at Tommy Castellanos in the passing game, I really don't think there's much to really be excited about. I think that this is just your average run first quarterback who can do a little bit in the pass game, especially when it opens up. What helps you out in the passing game, you bring in Deuce Robinson from USC and Squirrel White. Deuce Robinson, originally recruited as a tight end, has transitioned to wide receiver and been really, really solid. A big body wide receiver, a big red zone threat, but he's got a lot of speed too for his size. Makes him a bit of a mismatch for most defenses. Then you add Squirrel White, who's not a proven number one wide receiver, but he's not necessarily a guy you sit back and ignore defensively, or you act like can't be a first option. You also have Lewayne McCoy, and then Javen Boggs, who was just outside. I think he was a 56th overall wide receiver in the last recruiting cycle. A kid who can maybe start making some plays and even being a part of this offense as the season goes on. I don't really know who the solid fourth receiver is. I presume it's Javen Boggs, but it could be Elijah Moore. It could be BJ Gibson. I don't personally know. I'm not close enough with the program. I don't have inside scoop. That's the one thing I will say about these videos. I don't have inside scoop. I'm not going to act like I do. This is what my eyes have shown me. This is what I have a feel on based off of what I read and what I see in the roster. You also have Landon Thomas, who I think can be a decent tight end. I don't think anything great. I'm not expecting this huge, like, top 5 tight end in the country type play, but I think he can be what you ask him to be. All in all, I think the offense really improves. 15.4 points per game. I would expect more than that. I'd say I set the goal as like 17 to 20. I think would be an improvement. It wouldn't necessarily make the team better, but it would be an improvement upon last year. I think the biggest thing is Gus Malzahn. I really trust what he likes to do. And I think the option attack, utilizing Castellanos' legs as a primary option, and then basing your passing game off of that. We're not going to sit here and act like Thomas Castellanos is not a guy who can hit you with a deep ball here and there. We're not going to act like he's not a guy that can get, consecutive completions to get a drive going and be the one to lead a 2-minute offense. I think all of the tools are there. We just haven't seen it. It never was really proven at Boston College. He had a few weapons over his time there, but nothing crazy, nothing that anybody's like sitting back and, oh my goodness, this is the best move in the portal. It's this cautious optimism that things do really improve for this offense. Personally, I think they'll be above 20 points per game, if I'm being honest. Part of that might come down to schedule, but part of it also, I think that they do legitimately improve in the offensive category. And it really starts at quarterback and just taking care of the football. That's going to be the biggest thing between another losing season and being bowl eligible. I don't think this is a national championship contender. Let's be very straightforward and brutally honest that Florida State's not a national championship contender. What they are is a team that can go out, win anywhere from 6 to 9 games, I think, and be competitive in every single game they play, which is what they should have been last year, and I think what they'll get closer to this year. When we look at the defense, the biggest thing that stuck out to me was just overall inexperience, and I think a lot of that is partially the fact that some of these guys, especially the front 7, inexperienced in working together. But you also have the secondary that's pretty young, and a lot of guys, other than Shyheim Brown, haven't been on the field much. They've gotten their run, but they're not starters. They're not bona fide every down players. What I trust here is Tony White, and I trust Shyheim Brown to be the leader of this defense. The biggest thing for me is the defensive line, and at the line of scrimmage, how do they play? They lost Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones. Payton went on to LSU, Marvin Jones going on to Oklahoma. It's a big loss if you're Florida State. You wonder how you replace that on the defensive line. They bring in James Williams, a junior. Deontay McCray is going to come in. And then you have Darrell Jackson Jr., who I think can be a decent player. DeMonte Diggs is going to be a guy that comes off the bench himself. On all of these guys, I think, have potential to do what you want them to do. Of course, then you got Stephon Thompson, Elijah Herring, a couple other transfers at the linebacker position. It's not a bad defense, I don't think. I think they'll sit right around where they were last year, 28 points per game. I would say they may bump that down to closer to 25. If I'm being generous, but I think that what they were last year is going to be very similar to what they are this year. I just think that there's going to be a little more on the line, and I think that Gus Malzahn, not only what he brings to an offense and what he can be for an offense, but what he also brings to the head coach, Mike Norvell, how he can advise and help Mike Norvell get through this season and be able to better utilize personnel. I think it can't go unnoticed, and it really, I think, plays to an advantage for this Florida State team. Overall, I don't have any dislike for this roster. As a matter of fact, I like it a lot from a perspective of a lot of role players who are now going to get their chance to shine. Deuce Robinson, Squirrel White being a big-time role player, not necessarily ever a primary guy at Tennessee. Thomas Castellanos, a good quarterback for Boston College. Can he be good for Florida State? How does he help that offense move forward? And then the defense. Who steps up and becomes that new leader of the defense? What I really think the expectations should be, this is not expectations that Florida State fans have. I just dropped my pen, of course. Not expectations I think fans should have or do have, but it's just making a bowl game. I mean, this is not necessarily the lightest schedule. You started off with Alabama. I mean, how do you really think you're going to move through that? But then you go from there, and that game on the schedule, so then you move on and you have Miami, Florida. You have Pitt, who I think is going to be pretty solid. Clemson on the road. Virginia Tech's going to be a decent team. NC State, I don't really know what NC State's going to be. And then you have Florida at the end of the year on the road. Like, it is not going to be an easy schedule or an easy season for Florida State. But I also think that it does lighten itself up a little bit from last year. Again, NC State, I think, is going to be down. It's going to be much more competitive. Virginia Tech, I expected a big jump last year. We didn't get it. How am I going to expect that again this year? I probably don't. Wake Forest. I love Jake Dickert, but I don't really know what this team's going to be in 25. Stanford, I mean, they're in the middle of their own mess right now with Frank Reich coming over as a head coach after they really inexcusably fired Troy Taylor. Virginia, Kent State, East Texas A&M. I mean, that's a decent schedule. You're over under 7.5, and there's probably 6 or 7 question mark games. I don't say any of them are losses per se, but I will say they're question marks. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and talk about the schedule? Up here on the screen, you see it. As I go, this is going to go, and it's going to pop up what I predict here. Starting off, you get this game against Alabama. It's in Doak Campbell Stadium, but I don't really know what to say. It's two teams that are really bringing in a lot of new, a new quarterback at Alabama. If Florida State's defensive line is better this year, or is at least capable of producing the way that Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones could, this game becomes a lot more interesting. I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think that Alabama is going to really try to prove something. Ryan Grubb coming back, reuniting with Kalen DeBoer, whoever the quarterback's going to be, whether it's Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, who knows what I think is going to happen. I think Alabama is going to win and roll in this game. I don't really have a whole lot of over-the-top expectations for an upset here. I'll quickly go through these next two games. I think East Texas A&M and Kent State are both obvious wins. Kent State was winless last year, and East Texas A&M was maybe a one-win team, I think, last year in the Southland. 2 games to really figure out who you are and what your identity is going to be. That's what these 2 games need to be and should be. You follow that up going up to Charlottesville, and I don't think that Charlottesville is a bad place to be. One thing that hit me after I already did this preview and have looked, Chandler Morris is going to be the quarterback at Virginia, which is a step up, I think, from Anthony Calandria. I mean, Morris has only played about 10 years in college football at this point. It doesn't put me over the top, but I really love what Tony Elliott's doing. We'll talk more about that when we get to that video and the Virginia side of this. I think Florida State is going to go on the road and win this game. It's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be a little tougher than people are going to expect it to be. But I think they're going to get a win. It's going to be a good confidence booster, getting off on the right foot in ACC play. You welcome two teams back to back. You get Miami on October 4th, and I'm going to be honest, I think Miami rolls here. Look, the offensive line at Miami is one of the best in the country, and you pair that up with Carson Beck, who I think is going to finally be a little bit more comfortable. This offense is going to be rolling. Defensively, I expect a lot of big things from Miami. I think that's a fringe playoff team. Florida State, I just don't. This is a rivalry game. It could turn out differently, but I'm taking the Hurricanes to get the win here. To follow that up with a loss to Pitt, I really like Eli Holstein. I think this team as a whole, this Pitt team, is going to be a dangerous team to anybody they play. One of the best linebacking rooms, one of the most underrated, under-talked about. I consider them my best linebacker room in college football. This Pitt Panthers team is going to be scary to play, and they're gonna put a loss on the board for Florida State on October 11th. You move on, you go on the road against Stanford. I'm giving you a win there. I think that you will really not have many problems out there in Palo Alto. Biggest thing is going to be travel. But you get a bye week the week after. I don't think it's going to be too difficult. You come out of that, you get a win over Wake Forest. Again, I like Jake Dickert. I think that once he figures out what he wants this program to be and how he's going to do it, obviously that, along with Dave Clawson still kind of advising, it's going to be an interesting start. I think Wake Forest eventually becomes a team that's at least perennially bowl eligible. Make sure I made that clear. But they'll be 5-3 when you go on the road against Clemson on November 8th. And I would assume this is a night game. I don't know. Probably depends on what everything else looks like around the country. But you're going to go on the road to Clemson, and you are going to, I don't want to say get humbled. I think the humbling came probably week 1. But I think that this is going to be a game that you just don't have a shot in from the beginning. You're on the road, hostile environment, and a team that is hungry to not only win and make the playoffs again, they're hungry to maybe go win a championship. In saying that, I think Clemson rolls in this one. You get Virginia Tech, and I have these wants for Virginia Tech to be better than they've been over the last handful of years. I think that this is a team that certainly belongs in the conversation of improvement, but we have yet to see it under Brent Pry. We kind of see the stagnation of the program. I'm taking Florida State for the win here to move on. That makes it 6. You're bowl eligible based on last year. I think at this point, the season is saved. Not the season. Mike Norvell's job is saved. I don't think the buyout is quite as explainable or explicable, whatever you want to say, versus 4 or less. At this point, I think we are wholeheartedly safe in Mike Norvell's job. But then you follow it up with another win. You go 7-4 going into the game against Florida. It's a momentum, 2 straight wins, a big win on a Friday night against NC State. Biggest thing again, I like CJ Bailey. I think this is a okay roster, but I just don't think they're better than Florida State. And I don't think that Carter Finley can do enough in the crowd department, in the environment department, to really even this game out. So sitting at 7-4 when you go to Florida. Florida comes to town, to Tallahassee. But I'm taking Florida to win. I like DJ Lagway a lot. I think this is a team that's probably going to be in the college football playoff conversation themselves. And in doing so, it's going to be really tough. That's a motivated team that might even need this win to solidify that playoff opportunity. But 7-5. Let's sit here and talk about this. Your over-under is 7.5. I'm taking the under, clearly. but I don't think it's quite as bad as the fan base might think. You sit at 7-5, coming off of 2-10. You go above 500 in conference play. You have a lot of improvement. If that's the case, it's a really good starting point, assuming Gus Malzahn or Tony White don't get poached to go elsewhere. It's also a really good thing because I don't think this roster is 10-win capable. I really don't even think they're a 9-win capable team. But they may win one of these games that I have a loss on. They might. But beyond that, I don't think there's really, I think it's kind of one way or the other. I think if you're looking at this schedule, you're expecting wins in these 7 games. If you're looking at the schedule, you're expecting a loss in 4 of those 5. And I think the Pitt game's probably the one that you're probably sitting here and telling me you're wrong on. And that's okay. I understand that. I hear you, even. I think that it's certainly possible, especially down in Tallahassee. Really love what Pitt is. And that's just kind of the bottom line on that thought process. But we sit here, and their odds to win the ACC are not bad. They're plus 2,500, a pretty solid place to be. And your national championship odds sit at plus 20,000, meaning you would win $200 for every $1 you place a bet on them to win the national title. Now, what am I trying to tell you here? Nothing. Don't bet on this because I tell you anything. But I think it's a worthy and something that you should pay attention to. So with that is my prediction for the Florida State Seminoles in 2025. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know where you think I'm wrong. Let me know some players that you think I need to know. Remember that I don't know your team in terms of the roster better than you do in most cases. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know who I need to keep my eyes on. So that way when we come around later, I reserve the right to change my mind. Maybe Florida does get that extra win or two when I do conference previews and full predictions of conference standings. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Again, every single day, 1 p.m. Eastern, team previews drop Sunday to Sunday. I am super excited to get to this. Really excited to just get rolling and see how this all turns out. Hopefully you guys will stick with me along for the ride. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Oklahoma State Cowboys. You're up next.